Welcome to Aegis 360 Consulting. We're going to be talking about tips and tricks of online presenting today. As always, we record our webinars and we put them out on the web available for you to share and to use. You can go to Aegis 360 on the YouTube and see all the webinars and other presentations that we've done out there. So glad to have you. So clearly, clearly we're doing a lot of this. We're jumping into a lot of things online and we're trying to figure out how to do it the best way we possibly can. And so, you know, let's get started here. Hold on one second. And for whatever, there we go. So it's really interesting that we need to get some things right. And so what can we get right? And that's what we're going to really talk about today is some things to get right. And it's not a lot. This is not as difficult as it sounds. So let's just jump right into it and talk about it. And this doesn't matter what platform you're on. I don't care if you're on Adobe, WebEx, if you're on Zoom or if you're on Google Hangouts or whatever platform you're using, it really doesn't matter. These things are going to transcend that. You need to learn the platform. You need to understand that. That's a whole nother, you could do a webinar for each one of those. They have great tutorials, all of them. You can go on and learn where the buttons are and how to use it and so on and so forth. These are just some really basic things that you need to do. And you know, we could talk at length about getting involvement and engagement. Well, a lot of times that depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you want to get that engagement, that's a whole nother section of learning that we need to talk about. This is just some really basic stuff that we need to start doing. So let's start with audio. This to me is so simple to fix and it's so important. And clearly, if you haven't by now heard somebody talking and they're using the microphone on their laptop or the microphone in their desktop, and it's bouncing all over the place and you can hear this massive echo and sounds like they're in a barrel and so on and so forth. And we can make so much of that go away with a very small expenditure. I'm going to share with you what I use here in my office and what I've spent a little bit of money on. But I would tell you that you can go to Best Buy and you can just say, hey, I need a microphone that plugs in my computer and is going to sound okay. And for a very small amount of money, you can get what you need. And I'll kind of go into some little more detail on that. But get some decent audio. Now, part of the audio is a microphone, but the other part is trying to get as much other sound out of it that you possibly can. So fans that are running in the background, shut those off. Other things that are running in the background, try to get, anybody that's in the sound recording business will tell you, as quiet as you can get the room, as much extraneous noise you can get out of it, the better. Again, you're not recording for prosperity. You're not putting out the next big album. So you don't have to go to a lot of trouble, but you should do a few things. If you're in a home office and you've got hard walls behind you, maybe some sort of a cloth wall hanging that would look good and it would absorb some of that bounce sound would really help. Sometimes a microphone alone will do it, but really strive for some decent audio. Try to get all these extra noises out of it, and you'd be surprised how much of an upgrade it is, and it's just a lot easier for people to hear you. The other thing I'll tell you about audio, when you're not talking, please mute your system. Put your speaker on mute. Now, every platform has a different way to do that. There's a button. In Zoom, you can put yourself on mute and then hit the space bar and it opens you up and then let your finger off the space bar. And so there's a ton of different ways to do that. Learn how it's going to work on yours, but please put yourself on some level of mute when you're not talking to carve out any other conversation. If you're having to join a meeting in your car and you don't have the video piece of it, you're not on the computer, put your phone on mute when you're not talking. It just is really polite and makes it easier on everybody else. If you're running the meeting, mute everybody and then unmute them as you need to, or give them the opportunity to mute themselves. So again, this isn't a big deal. It's not hard to accomplish this. These are all really simple, inexpensive things to do. And again, I'll show you some of that. Lighting is huge. Lighting is really, really important. Some really simple things about lighting. No lighting behind you, only in front of you. And I'll show you how I have it set up I have a very small office. I'll show you what we did here. So don't point yourself towards a window. you're going to have all this lighting coming in the back. And again, you don't need studio quality here. You just need to make it somewhat nice and easy for people to observe you and to look at you. Even if you're the presenter, you want to really bring it up. But even if it's just a meeting, try not to have any light behind you. And I went through all kinds of gyrations here to get the lighting right. You'll notice that that you might see some lights. Let me look. Yeah, you can see a light up in my ceiling. I don't have that on because it put all kinds of glare and everything, and you couldn't see it. So I have those disconnected now. And I'll show you, I got some pictures on here. I'll show you what I did for lighting in my office where I do most of my presentations like this. So just think about your lighting. Lighting is really inexpensive to buy. You can even do your own, but I went ahead and bought some. It was super inexpensive to purchase it, and I'll share that with you. But think about the lighting, and you can turn on your webcam. You don't even have to be online, and just look at it. Just say, what am I seeing here? Does that look good? Is that what I want to put out? So it's, again, this isn't all that hard to do. So really think about some lighting. So we've talked about sound. We've talked about lighting. This is actually in my office. You're looking at what I'm standing in front of right now, and there's a couple of things on here I want to point out to you. The very first thing I want to point out to you is you'll notice I have a stand-up desk. Now, ironically, I've had this stand-up desk for a long time because I like to stand up, for a couple of hours a day, if not more. So this is one of these. It's called a VariDesk, I believe is the name of it. You can find it online. And it just goes on top of, you'll notice it just sits on top of my current desk. You can buy a stand-up desk if you don't have one. They're electric, they go up and down. You can spend a lot of money, you don't have to spend much. I think this one here, I bought the larger one because I have dual monitors. I want to say this was about 500 bucks. And I've probably had it 3 or 4 years. It's mechanical. You'll notice there's 2 holes on either side. That's where you put your hands through and you grab a latch and you raise it up, you lower it down. I always present standing up, always, always, always. I'm standing up right now. There's a couple of reasons I do that, and I'll point out to what those are, point those out to you. You'll notice the one light that I have here is, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. I think that light cost me $48. That is a photography light. It comes with it folds open. It came with a bulb. It came with everything, a tripod. I went ahead and mounted it to the wall because I didn't have room for the tripod. I have a pretty small office. So I didn't really have a lot of space for it. But I mounted it there, and then we changed the light bulb to a softer bulb. It was a little too bright, so we put a softer bulb in there, and we use those fluorescent curly bulbs because they don't put out a lot of heat, and you can control those. But that's what came with it. So I just put a lower wattage bulb in there, and I just fooled around with it until I got it to where the lighting was as good as I'm going to get it in here, and it's not bad. Off to my right, there's another light that also gives some other lighting and helps in the background, so I don't have a ton of shadows back there. I don't want a lot. So, and I'll show you what that one looks like. You'll also notice I have a microphone. You can see the microphone in the video. You can also see it in the picture up here. That entire microphone with the boom and the little filter that's in front of it, the whole thing was $119. So we're not talking large sums of money. And it's a USB. It plugs right into your computer. You don't need anything else. It plugs in. The computer said, "Oh, you got a mic. Is that the one you want to use?" I said, "Yes." Boom, we were done. And the quality is really, really high. It's really nice. Before, the microphone was built into the computer is actually, if you look just below the mic and you'll see to the left and down, that's where the computer is. Can you imagine how bad the sound was? Because that's where the mic was. And I don't want the mic all the way down there. I want it up here. Now, the other option for a microphone that you can have is, you'll notice that's where my webcam. I highly, highly recommend you get a decent webcam. There's a couple of different, I don't care if you're on a laptop or a desktop, get a webcam. This webcam happens to have a microphone in it. It's a little better than the one that's built into the desktop, into the tower, but it's not great. It's not intended to be great. It's intended to not be used in presentation, but just, you get on with your boss or something and you talk back and forth, that's fine. I stepped it up because I do a lot of these, so I did the other microphone. Now, I'm big on the webcams because I want a fairly decent, I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars on a camera. So I think this one was it's like $100, maybe 110. Most of your decent webcams run between $100 and $130. Most of them have a microphone built into them. I don't care about the microphone because I use my own. I cared that it had a little bit higher resolution level, so I got a little better a picture on here. That's really, really important. So I really want a decent webcam. Here's the other thing with the stand-up and the webcam on top of the monitor. I can get eye level with you. I'm looking at you at eye level. You're not looking up my face this way. You're not seeing me from this way. You're not seeing me from an angle. Straight on, just like we would do it in a regular studio. And this, again, it's just another level of professionalism. A lot of laptops have the camera all the way down near the keyboard. So when you're talking and you're on your keyboard typing and not paying attention to me, I can see you. So think about that. Think about what the other person is seeing. That's really critical. The other thing I'd like to point out here is what I just have in a red circle down here just above the keyboard. That is actually a little stand. And when I'm presenting, not necessarily today, but when I have a co-host or a producer, and sometimes I do much larger online presentations than I actually have a co-host or a producer, I have my my phone on there. I have the vibrator turned off so it doesn't make sound. I have the ringer turned off. The reason I have it there is if everything else fails, my co-host or producer can send me a text message and we can communicate back and forth. Really, really critical. When I do these shorter webinars, I don't have anybody else, so I don't need to do that. So I have it here. It's a little charger stand, but I don't necessarily have to have it. So this is critical. Now you don't have to spend $500 on a stand-up desk if you don't stand up very often at your desk. What you want to go onto Google and put in there is laptop riser. And you can find a very inexpensive riser. They're less than $100. You pull it out and you use it as a riser and you'll get it up to face level. You can even get it to where it rises up when you're sitting, so you're still at face level, and it just looks so much better. I'd really prefer not to look up your nostril. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. And it's like, oh my God, would you please stop it? Please, please. So really think about what other people are seeing. Now let me show you something else I do when I online present. I've got, and I have it right now, this happens to be my Surface, but I can also use an iPad. Oftentimes I will do the iPad, and I'll tell you why I do the iPad and not another PC or a regular laptop. Basically, what I want to see here is exactly what you're looking at. So I sign on as a guest. You'll see in the attendee's name right now, if you look in there, you'll see me in there. You'll also see me over on the panelist side, and you'll see me both places. The reason I do that, and you got to get a little tricky sometimes with the software. Sometimes it won't let you sign in. So I use an alias email to do that, and I kind of trick it to make it think it's somebody else. The reason I do that is I want to be able to look here and see exactly what you're seeing, because I'm looking at something completely different oftentimes. I want to say, okay, did I get it to the right monitor? Is my video where I want it? I want to see what you're seeing, so there's no question. Now, the reason I normally do it with an iPad is because oftentimes people are signing on with an iPad, and I want to see what they're seeing on the iPad. Oftentimes they'll say, where's that control? And I can help direct them. If I've got a really big group and it's a really important presentation, I will have both the iPad and a laptop and this, so I can help somebody see what they're seeing if I need to. And there's no question about what's being broadcast out. This is really critical. And again, I don't care what the platform is. This is some really simple stuff here. So this is a basic setup. That happens to be my other, off to the right, that's my other light. You say, why do you have two different lights? I'll be honest with you, when I first went to do this and set up this small office I'm in, I didn't know which light I should buy. I'm not an expert at this. And so this light here, I think was $38. The other one was $48. I bought one. It wasn't enough. I didn't like the way it took up so much room. You'll see it sitting on a tripod. We're actually making a little mount to take the tripod off the desk and mount it to the wall. And I liked the other one, the little box one I had, because I felt that I had a little more control over it. So I bought that one instead. They both work. It's fine. I like the box one for a smaller office a little better. But again, if you add it all up, I got about 120 in the mic. I got about another 80, So I've got about $200 in just making it look and sound a lot better. That's not a lot of money to do some level of professionalism. We don't need to be in a full-blown studio here. So what do we need to do? Well, here's the checklist, right? Pilots use checklists. You should use a checklist for these as well. Practice first. I don't know how many times I can tell you this, practice first. Whatever platform you're going to use, get your friends to get on and practice with it. If you're going to use the breakout rooms, practice with it with a group that it doesn't matter how badly you screw it up. I was on one last night. They'd never used breakout rooms before, and they sent us to the breakout rooms, and it instantly came up with a little sign or a note that said, you're going back to the main room in 37 seconds or a minute or whatever. And they didn't know how to set it up to how long they wanted us in the breakout rooms. They'd never practiced. They'd never done it. So, you know, it was like, oh my gosh, it was just annoying. It wasn't a big deal. They finally figured it out. One of the participants said, you have to set the time different. Oh, okay. So we blew probably 12 to 15 minutes of presentation time for them figuring out how to use their platform. Don't do that. So practice first. It's really, really critical. And you probably can't practice enough. I'm going to be doing something later on this afternoon, and I'm going to use a different poll. I'm going to practice for about an hour before I actually go live with it. I think I know how it works, but I want to make sure. All phones off and the vibration off. Your desk phone's off. You probably saw in my picture I had an office phone there. I make sure that volume is off. I put the volume off on my cell phone. I also turn the vibrator off on my cell phone because when it's laying on the desk, you can hear it through the microphone, or put it out of the room if you don't want to turn it off. Or you could put it in your pocket, but now it's going to distract you, and you don't want the distraction. You want to be 100% on. So just turn it all off. Just turn it off so it's not a problem. Close all windows on the computer. So close your email. I don't want anything popping up saying you've got an email, or somebody has some sort of chat function and they chat in and everybody gets to see the chat or whatever. Turn all that stuff off. Not only is it a distraction, I don't want it inadvertently coming up on the screen that I happen to be sharing. Just turn it all off. It's just a lot easier. Plus, when you go to do screen sharing, you only want the screens open that you think you're going to share, so you don't inadvertently share the wrong screen. So just be very mindful of that. Check your lighting. Make sure your lighting's okay. I disconnected the lighting up here so I wouldn't have a big glare coming down. I went through quite a lot of gyrations to get the lighting right. And finally I got it as good as it's going to get, and it's not bad for what I'm doing. If you have a larger group, it's really important to have a producer. Have somebody that can read the chat room for you and take questions and talk about what's being chatted in, so you don't have to pay attention to that. When I do large groups, these pop-up webinars I do on my own, but I'm going to be doing one later on this month, and the producer and I are going to practice tomorrow. We're going to get on and we're going to kind of go through and get the flow down and say, okay, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this, have the roles and responsibilities down. When I need to go to a breakout, the producer's going to send people to the breakout. I'm not going to do it. I want to be all in and 100% focused on my audience and let the producer handle that. And then we talk back and forth and they help and so on and so forth. So have a producer. They don't have to be professional, but they have to be somebody that knows the platform and you can practice with. On your slides and whatnot, few words as possible. You'll notice that other than the title slide and the next slide that said just a few things, everything else has been pictures. You should know your content well enough that if you've got to have words on there to say, well, I don't know what I'm going to say, you don't know your content well enough, you shouldn't be doing the presentation at all. That might sound harsh, but I've been at this a long time, and I will tell you that if I had words on every single slide, you'd hate me. First of all, you're reading it, you're not paying attention to me, we're not having a conversation, there's just a lot we're not getting done here. So as few as words as possible. Now I will use it like I'm using it right now in kind of a checklist format, because I want you to really be able to grab a hold of that. But as few words on your slides as possible. By the way, I am really adamant about protecting intellectual property. So all of the pictures you see here, I get through a service. You can either buy them, or there are several websites out there you can use free stock footage. And it's really some quality pictures. This one happens to be free, but it's royalty free. That's the idea. I'm not stealing anything off the internet. Just because a picture's out there doesn't mean you can use it. Somebody has copyright to it. So I don't like people stealing my intellectual property. So I'm very, very cautious about that. It's just, not only is it legal, I just think it's honorable. So do one of two things. Go to one of these free sites and use the pictures they have. Go to a site and pay a small sum of money to be able to use however many pictures they give you, and be honest about it. By the way, the pictures that come through your Microsoft portal or PowerPoint portal are part of your license. You can use those, but you can't just go out on the internet and say, hey, gee, I like that picture, I think I'm going to use it. So I just think we should protect and be honorable of other people's intellectual property. I had an intellectual property attorney say it to me this way: that if you were driving down the street and there was a bicycle in a yard, is it yours? I said, well, of course not. He goes, when you're surfing the internet and you see a picture, is it yours? Well, the answer is no. He said, then don't use it. That's the easy way there's your intellectual property lesson of the day. And I've never forgotten that. I thought that was well said. Stand up when you present. If you're going to present, normally you're going to stand up. If you're going to present to the board, you're probably going to stand up in front of 12 or 15 people. So don't present sitting down. There's a different energy. Your lungs are different. You'll have different body movements. Everything will be different about the way you present. So stand up, which means you're going to have to do what? Either have a rig like I have it, or something else that will elevate the camera and the screens up to face level. And again, you can do laptop risers. They're way less than $100. So if you don't do this all the time, you don't need to spend a lot of money at it. I bought this Veridesk because I wanted to stand up at work, and I sometimes will stand up for 3 or 4 hours when I'm in my office all day. It just so happens it works great also when I'm presenting, but you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money to do this. Have the camera at face level. Please, let's not have nostril cam. Let's not have, mugshot side cam going on. Let's not see the top of my bald head. None of us need to see that. Straight on. Just think about it. Check your background. I've spent a lot of time on my background. I always try to check it to make sure there's not something up there. I've seen all kinds of things in people's background, and I go, I don't know that you really want to see that back there. I'm just thinking there's probably something that probably shouldn't be there. So pay attention to your background. You can get on Zoom, they have the virtual backgrounds. I'll be honest with you, they don't work very well. Depending upon where you are, you'll see them, they fade in and fade out. All of a sudden the person disappears, then they're back. I just like a natural background. Just treat it like a studio. Go back there, set your books the way you want it. Whatever you have, whatever pictures you have are fine. I know I was on a call earlier this morning, a presentation by my local Chamber of Commerce, which was excellently well done. Everybody's working from home. The person that works at the chamber has set up her home office. She spent an enormous amount of time paying attention to her background. I called her on the phone a couple of weeks ago and I said, Anna, I don't know if you did it on purpose, but your background is perfect. She said, oh my gosh, I spent 3 hours with the camera on and sitting there and paying attention to the background to get it just the way I wanted it, because I knew I was going to be doing a lot of this. So pay attention to some of that. If you're in an office environment and you don't want somebody crashing through the door in the middle of your presentation, I have a little sign and it has the little red light. I just went online and found one, said on air, just like you saw in the old days, right? The old radio shows, on air. And I have some tape and I put it on the door, and everybody else that works in there, and Ned's presenting. Don't go crashing in the door and interrupt him. So something that keeps other people out, just so you're not interrupted halfway through. You can do it in your home or whatever, and it works much better. None of this is expensive to do. Again, I've spent about $200 to try to get my lighting at some level of professionalism. I'm not in a professional studio. I'm in my own office. This happens to be an office building, but even if I was doing it at home, I've spent a little bit of money. I spent some attention to detail. I could probably make it better. There's probably things in my background that I could even work up a little bit. I've had people say, Ned, do you like the microphone right here in there? I actually do. I actually like that in there. I think that says, okay, you've worked a little harder to have a presentation that is of a little more value. So this is just a quick checklist. Again, I'm recording this. It's going to go out on YouTube. You're certainly welcome to go to our YouTube channel and share it with anybody you want. I'm glad to answer any questions you have. There's my contact information. I try to keep these right at 30 minutes, and we're making the mark here. I want to appreciate everybody for coming in. If you've got questions, anything you need to know, the chat box is open. You can throw it right in the chat. I'll be glad to answer anything that you'd like to know about. You know, I have done a lot of these over the years, and with this going on, I've got clients and we're cranking it up to a whole nother level. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of these, and I have just seen so much bad out there, and you don't have to be a professional to make yourself look a lot better and sound a lot better. So I'm willing to stay on. I'm going to pull an end to it now and respect everybody's time. But if you want to stay on and chat for a few minutes, if you've got questions, I'm certainly delighted to answer any questions anybody has. So thanks for everything. My contact information is there. The YouTube channel's there. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you the next time around. Take care.